Welcome back to episode 12 of Control Alt Dev, where Sean and I explore what's relevant in tech each and every week. This week, we're discussing the 6 key questions that keep coming up in our conversations with business owners. So, Sean, before we start, what have you been up to this week?
Thanks, Paul. So this week I've been sorting out my son's MOT. I've been to the doctors to submit my blood pressure readings because I'm now over 50, updating some UX screens for a mobile app we're building, identifying if we can build websites from squirting in AI contacts via an import to build web pages quicker. And probably like you, had 1,000+ video meetings. So what about yourself, Paul?
I've got to mention, Sean, you're sporting the most terrific moustache from Movember. It is. I know this is an audio podcast, but I am in awe. You look like a pilot.
I've been called many things this week, and I'm not even going to say what some of those were, but let's just say some of them were attributed to videos that we used to watch in the 80s. Have you ever supported a moustache before, Paul?
I have. We used to do it. We have done Movember. I've done quite a few fitness challenges for Movember in the past with Table. I've done challenges at work. One of the problems is Kurt has got the most like World War I moustache you've ever seen with the curly bits on the end and stuff. So
see, I love watching that. Is it House of Guinness?
Oh yeah. He
has got the best curly moustache, and it's not possible, not in a month.
Yeah. When I last did it, I think it was about 10 of us, and we had to draw kind of a random moustache from a pile, and that was what you had to grow. So, but I'm terrible with facial hair. I have a grey beard. That's all you need to know. So, I guess this week, linked into the fitness thing is I went for my first kind of run outdoors for a long time, even though it was miserable weather. And just before I was about to go, my daughter said, "Oh, can I come, Dad?" So I was like, "Okay." So I thought I'd have some fun. So I dressed in the most bright, luminous gear you've ever seen. My son said I looked like a minion. I had like a torch on my head. And I thought, well, that's what you get if you say you're going to come for a run with me. So she thought I looked like a highlighter running through the streets. That was basically my evening. So that was a lot of fun. But yeah, I think like you've segued into the lots of meetings is pretty much what goes on, face to face and on Teams and various other things. And I think, what we've pulled together today on this podcast is really to look at the core questions that we keep getting asked. And we just thought we'd address those. The only other thing that's been going on is obviously we're approaching the end of the year. So looking forward to the next year. So planning and how actually people are using AI to plan budgets and plan goals and things like that. So that's a really interesting thing that we'll cover. So yeah, I guess in terms of the core questions we'd like to cover today, is AI going to take my job? Where's the best place to get started? What should we not be doing with AI? How do I choose which tools are worth my time? Can I trust AI tools not to hallucinate? And as an employee, how can I use AI to support my roles? So those are the things that we're going to go into today. So we begin with the fear question. Is AI going to take my job? We hear it everywhere. And on the recent Channel 4 special, that exact headline was used. So let's unpack it.
Yeah, and what's important is it's not just hypothetical anymore. We're seeing real examples of roles being transformed or displaced and others emerging. So we'll explore both sides today.
Yeah, and I think, we've already touched on that. The documentary we're referencing is on Channel 4. It's titled, Will AI Take My Job? And it revealed some striking statistics. For example, nearly 3/4 of UK employers surveyed had already introduced AI in tasks previously done by humans. They even featured an AI presenter for the show, a symbolic example of how roles we didn't expect, like TV presenters, are being experimented on. And a highlight for Sean that pitted an AI law firm system against a human trainee solicitor. The AI drafted a claim form in 10 minutes for £100 plus VAT. The human spent 3 hours and cost over £1,000. So while the human finished product was judged stronger, the cost and time gap was real. And I think the total surprise for both of us, if you haven't watched it, this will be a spoiler alert, I'm afraid, is no physical filming actually took place. So the face, the voice, the body movements viewers had watched for nearly an hour were synthesized through machine learning models. So the same technology that enables companies like OpenAI, Anthropic and Google to generate increasingly realistic images, audio and video from text descriptions.
Yes, so from a business owner and a worker's perspective, this to me shows two things. One, AI is already capable of doing certain tasks faster and cheaper. 2, that it did show that employers, the humans, are still adding value, certainly obviously in the law example that Paul just mentioned. But as you always say, Paul, this is just the tip of the iceberg, the beginning of AI. Where will it be in 12 months' time? So the takeaway is some jobs aren't gone yet, but the nature of them is changing. And that is obviously what's happening.
Yeah, and I think when you dig into that law industry example on the program, what does it tell us about which jobs are most vulnerable, Sean?
Yeah, well, the Channel 4 example in the law industry actually reveals a lot about which types of jobs are most exposed to AI. And it's not just about the industry, it's about the nature of the work.
Yeah.
The AI, as you mentioned, Paul, it drafted a legal claim form in just 10 minutes. The solicitor took about 3 hours. The human version was more accurate, but the AI's was 90% and 18 times faster and dramatically cheaper, as AI was £100, as you said, and the lawyer was £1,000. So that gap in speed and cost tells you something. It's not necessarily the job title that's vulnerable, it's the tasks inside the job. So if we unravel this a bit further, if your role is made up of largely repeatable, rule-based, pattern-driven tasks, think legal drafting, admin or data entry. We mentioned HR last week and recruitment in the last podcast. Then you're standing right where AI is heading. These are jobs where there's a clear process or a template. There's a large volume of similar work. The output can be checked or reviewed rather than created or produced. That's the sweet spot for automation. But it's not just the law. We're seeing this across accounting, customer service, translations, content writing, even marketing and reporting. Anywhere that work can be standardized or scored for accuracy rather than originality. AI is moving in fast. What's interesting in the law example is that it also shows where humans still have the most value. The human solicitor wasn't faster, but they understood the context. Things like tone, negotiation strategy, client relationships, and the wider implications of the legal document. AI can't yet replicate that. So, if I was to generalize, the jobs most vulnerable are those with a high proportion of predictable tasks and low human interaction or interpretation. The jobs least vulnerable are those that rely on judgment, persuasion, creativity, emotional intelligence, or interpersonal nuance. And even inside one profession, say law, you'll see the divide widening. Paralegals might see parts of their role automated, but senior lawyers who use AI to speed up drafting and focus more on client strategy will thrive. The technology is dividing people by how well they integrate it, not just by the title. So let's bring this into a real world example. Have you seen or advised any of our clients, Paul, where you've seen a similar split, AI draft plus human review? Is this emerging in their business?
Definitely. And it's happening faster, I think, than most people realise. I think the way you've just summarised that it's the task, not the role necessarily, is brilliant, Sean. I think that's really good insight from that program and also from what we've been doing. I've got a few clients where, the exact AI first, human review second model is already becoming standard practice. For example, we've got marketing teams using GPTs to produce their first draft of blog posts, product descriptions or email campaigns for our company. They're not publishing that raw output, but it's saving them hours on structure, tone, SEO, keyword research. Then a human editor comes in to tweak it for your accuracy and brand voice and then post. So it's kind of like the 80-20 rule, isn't it? There's nothing worse than a blank sheet of paper. Like if I sit down to write a blog and I'm just sat there, I get writer's block so quickly. And I think you can ideate with it, then you can get it to draft multiple versions, go with the version that you most think is on form, and then ultimately you become the curator and the editor, don't you? So, and it's exactly the same in customer service. So one e-commerce client has been generating the first response to support tickets based on FAQs and order data. Then a real person reviews, edits, and approves it before it goes out. And what used to take 5 minutes per email now takes less than a minute. That's huge at scale. And again, there's this trust and accuracy that you've already touched on in terms of law. But as the accuracy increases and as the trust of what it does increases, I think these things will become much more automated through to completion. I've seen it creeping into more technical areas as well. So, one of our software developers and teams, we all use GitHub, and we all use Claude Code to write chunks of repetitive code. The developer still reviews every pull request before committing, but it's like a completely different workflow. And there is automated AI pull requests still happening. So it's almost like the developers are understanding the context, but they're still saving time by looking at what an AI agent has picked up on the code as well. So the job hasn't gone, but it's shifting from the creation of stuff to the curation and the expertise in that role. And I think that's the key, across industries. The pattern is the same. The human ideates, the AI then drafts the base work, fastly, cheaply, and consistently. And then the humans review and they refine and they add judgment, context, nuance, and quality. So the productivity lift is undeniable. But what's really interesting is how job roles are evolving because of it. The person who used to spend their day typing or formatting now spends time thinking, reviewing, and strategizing. And this is that upskilling we've talked about, all throughout these podcasts, isn't it? Is get people doing their best work. So the skill set is changing. You're becoming more of an AI editor or AI supervisor rather than a doer. And I think over the next year or two, we'll start to see job titles reflect that. So you'll be like an AI content reviewer or an AI prompt designer or an AI data auditor. So yeah, the split's already there. The winners are those who learn to work comfortably in that middle ground, letting the machine do the heavy lifting, but keeping the human oversight that makes it accurate, ethical, and valuable. And I think, one critical insight I had from a client is we had a meeting a few weeks ago and we were talking about, why did they ultimately employ a role within their team? And it was client relationships. And that's the thing that AI can't really do very well right now. So it was like, well, let's free your team of the admin and all the repetitive work that you've talked about, Sean, so that they can do what you actually employed them to do, which is to develop deep client relationships and, and strengthen the brand really. So yeah, I think that's crazy.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, obviously, the whole idea of our podcast anyway is to empower people to look into this subject of AI. It's not scary, but as you rightly said, Paul, it's it's here to stay, and you need to be on board with it and see where it can benefit you day to day. We've seen, haven't we, with Amazon? We said last week in the news section that Amazon have announced 14,000 corporate roles are going to go. So the business owner, the employee, the manager, it means this isn't distant. If you handle HR, admin, recruitment, basic legal work, you might be under pressure from two sides: cost reduction and, of course, automation. So Amazon said they're hiring more people in robotics and AI development, as you say, Paul. That's where these jobs are going to start to, I think, be seen, and we're going to see them in 2026. So some roles will shrink, but others will grow. So, Paul, can you elaborate on what kind of jobs are most at risk and which are more resilient?
I think, to repeat myself, we've touched on quite a few of these in previous episodes. So if you're a regular listener, you'll recognize the pattern here. But, if this is the first episode, then it's worth repeating. So, yeah, from the research side, the evidence is pretty consistent now. Roles that are made up of routine, predictable tasks, like you said, data entry, admin, or any job that follows a clear, repeatable process, they're the ones most at risk of being automated by AI. One recent paper actually found that automation-driven AI has already started to reduce employment and wages in lower skilled occupations. So the impact isn't theoretical, it's measurable, and it's now. But on the flip side, roles that rely on human complementary skills like critical thinking, creativity, digital literacy, and teamwork are in higher demand than ever. And that's that upskilling piece we were talking about, Sean. So, the research on AR XIV even phrases it perfectly. The more a job depends on judgment and collaboration, the more valuable that the human becomes. So it isn't replacing everyone, it's magnifying the gap between process-driven jobs and problem-solving ones.
So the message to listeners: if your job is to do the same thing every day, predictable, repetitive, you're more exposed. If your job keeps changing, needs judgment, deals with ambiguity, you're in the safer zone. I've seen clients in sectors like pest control, inspections, demolition, where human boots on the ground matter, AI may help planning, reporting, and documentation, but it won't replace someone digging out rats in a wall or removing a beehive. That human element remains.
Yeah, and I think just to interject on the whole job front as well, yesterday I took my son to a sixth form open evening, and they were really candid about it. That they were talking only about 3 years in the future. They were saying that they're doing their GCSEs this year, and in 3 years they will be looking at the next thing after if they do A levels at this sixth form. But what he was really alluding to is there are jobs that you will be entering the career, the workforce to do that don't even exist today. And that's the that's a real head funk for a teenager who's sitting for their GCSEs, is that the world of work is so unpredictable right now that if you're going for something in the future, the thing you might end up doing isn't even visualized in people's heads yet.
Well, who would have thought, I did computer science at university. I mean, who would have thought that particular skill is potentially not going to be there in the future?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Yeah.
Purely because, like, as we've explained in previous podcasts, that the level of AI and where it's going to reach, a lot of the low-level coding, we call it vibe coding, is there now.
Yeah, and so I think
it's scary.
We both run software development companies, so we have the constant internal conversations around the future of software engineering, and it's exactly what we talked about. I think the repetitive parts, the predictable pieces of code are gone. There's so if you are only doing basic, repeatable, the same thing, you're building the same type of website every day, you are screwed in a sense, because there's a machine can do it. But if you're doing complex, teamwork driven problem solving that is genuine innovation, that's where the humans excel. So I think it's, there will always be computer science degrees. I believe there will always be a need for computer scientists as well as but it's intertwined, isn't it? That they'll have elements of, there are AI engineers at the same time, there are agent builders at the same time, they're using the technology, but fundamentally the laws of computing don't change. But what they do on a daily basis will be massively different to how we entered the workforce. And yet, 20, 30 years ago, whatever it was, the day-to-day of my developers aren't that different from the 90s and the 2000s, really. Yeah, there's sophisticated tools, but they're still cutting code day as a day. And I think that's the shift.
So this is probably the most common question we get asked. Where do I actually start with AI? And honestly, I think people massively overcomplicate this. You don't need to sign up for 10 tools or start automating your entire business in the first week. The best approach is pick one core tool, learn it properly, and build it into your daily routine. For most people, it's either ChatGPT or Gemini. If you're in Google's ecosystem with Gmail, Docs, and Sheets, Gemini is built right in, so it fits naturally into how you already work. If you're like me, you're in Microsoft or use standalone apps, ChatGPT is still the best all-rounder, especially the GPT-5 version, which can handle text, images, data, deep research, and reasoning it really well. I tell people, don't choose the shiny new tool every week. Just spend a month mastering one. Once you understand what's good prompting looks like and what AI can and can't do, everything else becomes much easier.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think we also need to give a shout out to Microsoft Copilot, because that is huge. It'd be remiss to not mention that. But I think the other part of it as well, as you said, pick one core tool and kind of learn it properly. I think the best way as well is just to play with it, just to see what it can do. Most people start with almost a personal view of it. They go, well, I'm just going to have a play. I think it's so important to play. It sounds really stupid as an adult saying you should play, but I think there's no better way to learn some of these tools. And like you say, to pick a tool, have a really small goal, and just go, right, I'm gonna do this for an hour on a Friday afternoon, and the businesses I know that adopted AI the best, they allowed 20% time for literally just, right, we know we want to adopt AI. So what they decided to do was invest time into literally playing with different tools to find out what they wanted to do. But generally they would have a goal, and they would have they'd be working on the same tool. So yeah, I think you see so many businesses getting tool fatigue. They're signing up for everything. They've got Claude, Midjourney, Perplexity, Runway, Jasper, you name it. And then after 2 weeks, they're moaning about the cost of the subscriptions, and they've done nothing properly. And it's mastery, isn't it? It's mastery versus dabbling. I think the play element is how you get to mastery. So what actually works is embedding one AI tool into your existing workflow. So rather than saying, let's bolt on AI, let's look at the things you already do every day and ask, can I draft this faster? Can I summarize this quicker? And can I automate the boring bits? And I think it's worth going back to episode 10 and just listening to what Steph was saying about, automation, and actually it's about mapping out the process. But yeah, for example, if you're writing weekly client reports, try using ChatGPT to summarize your meeting notes and generate a first draft. And then if you're managing lots of email threads, have Gemini summarize the last 10 messages so you don't waste time scrolling. Or if you're in sales, get ChatGPT to role play your ideal customer and refine your pitch. And you can do all of that through text input. You can also do it through voice. Like I often, bizarrely, role play a sales meeting, talking to chat that I've loaded with the context of the meeting and what the agenda is and what the goal is. So the point is, it's not about learning AI as a new thing. AI is too big a topic to just think it's ChatGPT or it's just one tool. It's about integrating AI into what you already do. And first of all, you need to map that out, don't you, to understand what you do.
Yeah, you're right. Like you say, with what Steph does, it is sitting back and working out what you're trying to achieve, isn't it? As you rightly said there, and half the time we're all too busy to even do that. But you must take time to step back and say, I want to do this, and can this save me lots of time? Because certainly, we lost, unfortunately, 2 very good support members of staff this year. And my first response was, I need to go and employ 2 other people.
Yeah.
But actually, when you and I started this podcast, and you knew a lot more than myself, Paul, it was really interesting to get your insight into that. And actually, we still haven't employed 2 people. We don't need to, because what we've done now,
tickets are still being managed and handled, and the quality of service.
Absolutely, yeah. The support tickets, we've kind of switched to no phone support, which was a bit of a big thing for our customers to sort of take on board. I remember
talking about that.
Yeah,
we said you can't just pick up the phone and talk to Amazon.
Exactly. We just to kind of give you some insight, listeners, we have 3 software applications that we sell as a service, and we've always provided phone support. So Paul's known this, and it can be very, very, very difficult for all the support staff to do the tasks, because the phone rings and you stop what you're doing and you're engaging with that person on the telephone, and it can take its toll in terms of your mental well-being, not just because there's no real major issues, but because you're sort of you've got a set of tasks to do in a day or in a week, and generally, depending on that phone, it depends on whether you actually complete those tasks or not. So what we've done, really, in a nutshell, is we've stopped the phone support for the larger customers. That they do pay for it, so they obviously have the ability to phone in. But we have a ticket system, as Paul rightly said, and those tickets come in, and we can pick and choose, because if there isn't a general issue with the software, everyone will have the same issue anyway. But it's really been a blessing, really. So although 2 people leaving was, oh my gosh, how scary, it was a blessing, because now we're putting systems in place, or automations in place, to solve these issues that we've had. And that leads me on really to kind of say, really, from what Paul said, that AI isn't magic, it's a skill. The first few times you'll use it, you'll probably think it's rubbish because your prompt isn't clear, or you're giving it too vague a context. But after a week or 2, you start learning how to communicate with it properly. You probably start talking to it like I talked to Paul, giving examples of tone of voice and audience and structure. And that's where you start to see results that actually save you time.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, if you're listening and you are in that space where you really haven't experimented yet, a quick way to start is just to break it down into 3 simple steps. So, step 1 is choose your core assistant. So whether that be Copilot, ChatGPT, or Gemini, but just choose one, no more. Next is just define your AI daily task. So exactly what we were saying about mapping it out. Choose one small task, a part of your job to experiment with, something that you're doing on the daily and that is taking up, hours of time a day. It could be summarizing emails, writing proposals, analyzing meeting notes, generating marketing posts, or creating social captions. Anything that you're doing repetitively, like Sean was saying earlier, and then roll it out. And then after a week, do an analysis, reflect. Did it actually save you any time? Did it improve quality? Or did it actually reduce quality and there's an accuracy thing to address? And if yes, you've got the gains, then obviously keep using it and move on to the next workflow. If not, revise and ask AI itself how to improve that process. People they use AI, but they forget to ask AI, how would you do this? It's so basic of like, say, well, actually, I plan to do this automation. How can I go about doing it? And always ask it where it got that information from, how it came to that conclusion. But yeah, if you're having no joy, maybe the task, the workflow you're trying to do is too much to chew off, to bite off at the start. So just try another workflow. But you will build confidence. I'd say slowly, but actually you'll be surprised at how fast you can do it. And you can do it all without overwhelming yourself or your team is the critical thing. You've got to set your own goals. Hopefully that's a practical framework that just gives a bit of insight into how you would get started if you were literally doing nothing at the moment.
Yeah, once you've got that confidence, that's when you can start layering the tools. So maybe ChatGPT for content, Perplexity for research, Canva. In Canva, I use Canva a lot. There's a magic write, and that can come up with some visual elements. It's getting better and better for the assets, coming up with something and designing it for you. But you've got to nail the basics first. It's like learning to drive a car. You don't start by buying 5 cars. You start by learning how to drive one and using that steering wheel.
I always that analogy is brilliant because it's a bit like learning a musical instrument, isn't it? Like we've got musical instruments all around the house, and they've got past a bit, but my kids, they would almost like pick up the guitar the first time and want to play like Sweet Child of Mine. It's like that took me about 2 years to be able to play that. It was like, so I think it's a good analogy is you've got to have patience as well. I think the one thing AI can do really quickly is it can give you a false sense of a quick win. And we've seen this time and time again when the people that we're helping to automate, I was saying to somebody yesterday, they're actually like mature users of AI adoption. So they've rolled out AI. We're not going into them and saying why you should use AI. We're not educating them about AI. They've already done all these steps we've talked about. But where they're probably struggling is they've got particular agent or automation and they've rolled it out. Let's just call it a failed launch. It's not accurate. It's not predictable. It's doing certain things. And they don't understand some of the core components of like temperature checks and like which model matters. And well, I'd use Claude for that. I won't use chat, all these little nuances. And then all of a sudden, the thing that they tried to achieve, when you audit it, you go, that would never work because of these reasons. Like you're hitting your head against a wall here. The way you tried to do it, it will never work. So then you go back and go, but the end result, the goal you're trying to achieve is completely possible with AI. We just need to do it in a different way. And that's where things like Peter was talking about on a previous episode, like Mind Studio comes in and things that people try and do just solely in chat. Sometimes they're ambitious and actually you need a few other tools kicking along and helping just to format basic things like dates. So yeah, I think that's really useful. So for business owners, a big tip is to get your team involved early as well. Don't be the solo kind of, well, AI is important to this business, so I'm only going to be the one who does it. I think it's really important that your team get involved early. Instead of saying we're rolling out AI across the company, you get everyone to invest that 20% time to pick a task and see how AI can make their roles easier. That creates buy-in and it kind of surfaces your best internal use cases organically. You might discover that one employee or team member says, well, actually, I think we should automate this. And it's gold. And it's something you hadn't had even thought of or got the answers to. And once you find out what works, you can document it and scale it. And you'll find out how much of this kind of approach is repeatable. Once you crack one, doing 10 is easy. And you'll notice a pattern. So the people who are using AI daily become exponentially more efficient, and they don't start falling behind. And I think that's critical.
Yeah, so the short answer is, where's the best place to get started is, like Paul said, pick one tool, use it every day, make it part of your existing workflow, not a separate chore. Remember, you're not trying to replace what you do, you're trying to amplify it.
All right, we've talked about where to start with AI, but equally important is where not to start. So this is a mistake I see most people make, and they treat tools like ChatGPT, Copilot, or Gemini as if they're private assistants. They're not. If you're copying and pasting confidential client data or unreleased financial figures or internal documents straight into ChatGPT, you might as well be uploading them to a public cloud if you don't know about the privacy controls. Remember, these models by default learn from and store context. So while OpenAI, Google, and Anthropic all have privacy controls, the default mode is still to log your prompts for training or analysis unless you turn that off. So the number one rule is don't feed it anything you wouldn't shout across a crowded coffee shop.
Yeah, exactly. I always say using public AI tools without privacy settings is like telling your trade secrets to a barman and hoping he doesn't remember them. If it's client sensitive or commercially valuable, keep it out of there. I'll give you a real world example here. One of our marketing clients nearly uploaded a full client proposal into ChatGPT to reword it nicely. It was as simple as just reword it and format it. That document had pricing in it, internal costings and margins. Imagine if that data had leaked or been cached. That's not just an oops moment, that's a GDPR nightmare.
Yeah, no, I think exactly. And I think the other thing to mention is you've got to remember that ChatGPT, for example, is if you don't have those privacy settings enabled, it's becoming the new search engine. So it's not hard to go and ask questions about specific business and ask about their margins and industry and everything else. So, and I think so for professional use, we have to tell people to set it up either like a GPT team or enterprise account where the data isn't used for training, and you also look at the data privacy controls, or use temporary chat mode, which is now available and nothing is saved to the history or to the train the models. If you're in the Google ecosystem, again, check your data settings in Gemini. I think they're in Google Workspace, and disable the data sharing with the product improvement process. So another big one is don't upload client files like CSVs or PDFs with identifiable data. So like anonymize stuff first or summarize without names. I do this a lot where I'll talk to it about an upcoming meeting, but I'll just use initials. And it's just, I think you need to be skeptical, like a skeptic, around your privacy. Use it for the maximum gains, but really be cautious about what you're sharing, like you said, about the barman. So the risk isn't theoretical. Samsung famously had engineers copy internal source code into ChatGPT earlier this year to debug it, and those snippets ended up in the model's data set. So they had to issue a full internal ban, and that's how fast this can go wrong. So you could literally go to chat and ask it for the source code to one of their projects, and it would go, here you go. So that's a really good example of when things go wrong.
And it's not just data, is it? People are also blindly trusting the output. I've seen people paste AI-written content straight onto websites without checking sources. So they're using it now instead of a copywriter. So it's like a Wikipedia in 2004 and hoping for the best. You've got to remember, AI will say anything confidently, even when it's completely wrong. Think of it like a very confident intern. It writes quickly, it sounds smart, but you still have to proofread it before sending it on to a client.
Exactly. And I think that confidence is the problem. The Chicago Sun-Times is a perfect case study. They published an AI-generated summer reading list earlier this year, and 10 of the 15 books were completely made up. Titles, authors, blurbs, none of it existed. And that's a major newspaper. So it shows even professionals are falling for this stuff when they skip human oversight and research.
So if you're a business owner listening, the takeaway is simple. Use AI to speed up your work, but never use it to make the final call. Whether it's a blog post, a financial report, a legal letter, or product description, always check for accuracy, tone, and source before it goes out. The goal is for AI to make you faster and smarter, not sloppier. And if you're still unsure where to start or want to make sure you're using it safely and effectively, just get in touch with Paul and myself. We work with businesses every week on AI consultancy, helping them build the right processes and use AI the smarter way for their business.
Yeah, and I think we can boil this down to like a really simple, quick checklist, really, of what you shouldn't do with AI. So there's only 4 parts. Don't paste private or client data into public models. Don't skip fact checking or plagiarism checking. Don't rely on free tools for regulated or sensitive industries. And don't assume the AI understands ethics or compliance. If you do all that, you'll avoid 90% of the horror stories.
So basically, think of AI as the newest member of your team. It's smart, it's fast, but it hasn't got an ounce of common sense. And that's not a dig, Paul, at my team, by the way. It's just the truth. Like any new employee, AI needs to be trained, given clear boundaries, and you still need to check its work. The better you train it, the more value it will give back, but leave it unsupervised and it will make confident mistakes faster than any intern you've ever had. All right, so this question hits home for a lot of people. How do I choose which tools are worth my time? Every week, there's a new AI tool popping up on LinkedIn that promises to revolutionize your business. Before you know it, you've signed up for 5 free trials, spent half a day testing them, and got absolutely nowhere. That's what I call a tool overload. You could end up wasting time trying AI tools instead of actually using them.
Exactly, and you know, total confession time. We've been there too. You know, we start off with good intentions, and then by Friday we've got loads of tabs open with loads of different tools: ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Midjourney, Runway, Perplexity, half a dozen Chrome extensions that all do roughly the same thing. The problem is when you spread yourself too thin, you never master anything properly. So instead of saving time, you're creating digital clutter.
Yeah, and it's funny because most of the people we speak to don't need 20 tools. They just need 1 or 2 good tools that fit into their daily workflow. I say start with the all-rounders, the typical ChatGPT as number 1. Brilliant for content, as we mentioned earlier, ideas, summarizing meetings, as Paul was using it for, writing code snippets, but just be careful you've got your privacy settings on, emails, you name it. Gemini, perfect if you live in Google Workspace because it's right there inside Docs and Gmail. And for visuals, Canva, with its magic write and image generator, it's spot on for quick branded graphics or social content.
Yeah, and what's nice about those is that they're stable. They're constantly improving and supported by big ecosystems. You're not betting on some startup that might disappear next week or not have the best privacy controls. So here's my tip. When you evaluate a new AI tool, ask yourself 3 simple questions. Does it actually solve a problem I have? Don't just download it or sign in because it looks cool on TikTok. Can I actually integrate it into what I already use? So if you're on Google or Microsoft, stick with their built-in AI. It'll save you time, security headaches as well. And will my team actually use it? If you're the only one who understands it, it's not scalable. You want tools that the rest of the team can pick up in a day, and you want full adoption of the said tools across your business so that everybody maximizes and amplifies their efforts.
Yeah, and Paul and I had a client. I mean, it's a very low level bit of AI work we did here, but he was using 5 different tools for just content. Well, 1 for content, 1 for blogs, 1 for rewriting text, 1 for keyword research and better descriptions and hashtags. And we stripped that back to just using ChatGPT and Canva. And suddenly they cut their content time in half and actually started publishing again instead of experimenting endlessly. Sometimes less really is the more.
Yeah, and the shiny object syndrome is real. I remember a few months ago when Sora dropped, everyone was saying this will change filmmaking forever. And then a week later, they hadn't used it once. The truth is most of these tools are early stages. They're great to experiment with and play like we talked about earlier, but you shouldn't build business processes around them until they mature. Stick to proven ones that you can save time today, not maybe in a year's time.
And from a business perspective, that's really important because each tool adds a subscription, another login, another potential data leak risk. I'd rather have 2 tools we use daily and train staff on properly than 10 that sit unused. That's why when we do AI consultancy, we always start with an audit, Paul is always saying, what's your top 3 things you want to automate? You'd be amazed how much can be consolidated.
Yeah, so if you're listening and you're feeling overwhelmed, here's a simple version. Pick one writing assistant, ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot. Pick one visual tool, Canva, Midjourney, Miro, Ideogram, and pick one research helper, Perplexity or Manus, something that uses verified sources. Master those, then stop. You'll cover 90% of what most professionals actually need. The rest, they're just niche tools, and you can come back to them later once you've already experienced the gains and built the foundations.
Exactly. So next time you see a LinkedIn post claiming this new AI tool will change your life, maybe just take a breath, finish your coffee like I am, and ask yourself, do I really need another login?
So this one's short and simple. Can you trust AI to not make things up? And the answer is absolutely not. The best recent example we talked about was the books being published, the 10 to 15 books that didn't even exist on the summer reading list. The AI had completely faked up titles and authors, and it had all been written confidently as if it was real. And I think the confidence tone of AI is a real problem that people don't see. So the core problem is that AI does know facts and it does know a lot of information, but what it's actually doing as a large language model is it's trying to predict what it thinks you want to hear in terms of the right answer based on patterns in data. It's like a friend who tells great stories, but occasionally just invents half of them. I think we all know a friend like that.
Yeah, and I think that's what catches people out, because the tone sounds professional. You believe it. We spoke in the previous episode that lots of recruitment consultants actually trusted what was coming out of the AI. And I've seen this in our own work too. If you ask for stats or case studies and don't double check, it'll often reference articles that don't exist or mix 2 sources together. So I always say, trust the process, not the output. Use AI to get the structure, the tone and the ideas, but fact checking everything before it leaves your desk is paramount.
Yeah, and I think there's a quick story with my wife here where we're polar opposites when it comes to AI, and she quite rightly found an example online that I think was on TikTok where I think it was to do with British trampolining, and somebody was proving quite rightly with ChatGPT that what it was coming out with was completely made up, and so it was a whole story around. Okay, tell me about this, and it was going deeper and deeper, and it was saying all this stuff, and none of it was true. But the problem is, because people don't understand that, they then instantly turn off it and they're missing all the potential gains. Whereas what we're trying to say here is, yes, we know it's not perfect, but it is an incredible tool that I think you would be foolish to dismiss because it's inaccurate. I think it's everything you've just talked about is we go into AI and we go into the automation stuff we're doing, knowing that there's these flaws, but there are ways in which you can completely mitigate the risk. And I think people who go into it blindly and trust it are going to have huge problems like we've seen. And I think people who distrust it because it once told them something that was untrue have missed the point of how it actually works. So I think it's this balancing act. So the smart move is to use AI for drafting, not deciding. Notebook LLM and Perplexity are a bit more reliable because they show sources, but even then, you still got to verify them. So hallucination isn't a bug. It's just a part of how generative AI actually works.
Yeah, AI's confidence doesn't equal correctness. Treat it like a clever intern, great at getting you started, terrible at being left unsupervised, but check the facts, verify the sources, and if in doubt, let a human make the final call. So this question actually came from a guy in my networking group. As an employee, how can I use AI to support my role? Because most of the AI talk is from a business owner or management perspective, but what about the person actually doing the job every day? My answer is use AI as your personal productivity partner. Let it help with the boring stuff, summarizing meetings, drafting reports, or generating templates, so you can spend more time on the creative or strategic work that really matters. And don't wait for your boss to tell you to use it. Take the initiative. The people who learn to work alongside AI now are the ones who are going to stand out later.
Yeah, and think of it as leveling up your toolkit. So you can use, a model, ChatGPT, Gemini, whatever, to learn new concepts, test ideas. That's what I use it a lot for, and even role play customer scenarios before a big presentation. And there's a huge career advantage in showing that you can use these tools responsibly. When you bring that skill into a company, you save time, you improve accuracy, and you help your colleagues. You instantly become more valuable as a team member. And the people in my team who embrace innovation and adoption, they do very, very well, if that makes sense. So I always tell my team, document your wins, keep a short list of where AI saved you hours or improved results. And that becomes evidence, for the next one-to-ones that we have, and proof that we're forward thinking and efficient. And I think you've also, a critical part of this is you have to celebrate the failures. Don't hide from the fact that you tried something and it didn't work. I think the learning is in the fact that it didn't work, and we can look at why. So it's really important as well to celebrate the successes, is to celebrate the failures, and to have those conversations with team members that when they've tried something, the attempt to try and improve something wasn't the problem. It was in potentially the execution. And as a team, collaboratively, we can probably solve that. So there was a reason you tried to fix that. And I think, embracing failure is a key part of this whole, going back to the play analogy, isn't it? You learn less sometimes, trial and error. AI at the very start, if you've never used it, is a lot of trial and error. And that links into what we were talking about with the fact that it hallucinates.
Yeah. And to be clear, it isn't about automating yourself out of a job. It's about staying relevant. The employees who thrive in the next few years will be those who know how to use AI, not those who ignore it. Use it to upskill, to learn faster, and to demonstrate initiative. If your manager sees you saving time and bringing new ideas through AI, that's leadership in action.
100%. And whether you're in admin, marketing, finance, or operations, just start small. Pick one AI tool, learn it properly, and show how it improves your day-to-day. Because in the modern workplace, being AI literate isn't optional. It's a career advantage. All right, so it's time for our news section, our quick-fire tech roundup. Another week, another set of headlines proving just how fast this space is moving. And let's break down what's happening right now.
So first up, IBM have revealed its new quantum chip called Loon. They called it a major leap towards practical quantum computing, not just lab experiments anymore. So the chip is designed to solve complex calculations at speed traditional computers can't touch, which could completely change things like logistics, material science, even cyber security. So what's interesting here is that IBM's talking about making quantum useful, not just theoretical. That's when it started affecting businesses like ours.
Yeah, and quantum is one of those topics that's always sounded like science fiction. But when companies like IBM start saying they can make it commercially viable by the end of the decade, it's getting real. So once that happens, the entire encryption model of the internet can change overnight. Banks, governments, everyone will have to adapt.
The next big headline, Microsoft has pledged £22 billion to build AI supercomputers and data centres right here in the UK. That's a massive confidence signal in the UK tech sector. It's basically saying we're going to make the UK one of Europe's AI infrastructure hubs.
Yeah, and we need it, don't we? Because that ties into the next story, NVIDIA warning that the UK simply doesn't have enough digital infrastructure to compete globally. Their CEO said, we risk falling behind if we don't invest in data capacity and AI computing power. It's like having great drivers but no racetrack. We've got the talent, but not enough servers or GPUs to run large-scale models.
Exactly, and it's why our Prime Minister, Paul, Keir Starmer's £1 billion AI investment plan is interesting. It's a political signal. They know AI isn't just a tech issue anymore, it's an economic one. Whoever owns the infrastructure owns the future growth.
Yeah, and I always like the scarier side of the news. So a report came out showing that 65% of major AI companies have exposed API keys or tokens publicly on GitHub. That's leaving the keys to your car in the ignition. It's a reminder that as AI adoption scales, security has to catch up. We're putting a lot of sensitive company data through these systems, and the leaks are often human error, not hackers.
Yeah, and it proves that as we rush to innovate, we can't skip the boring stuff like governance and compliance. Every business using AI, even small ones, needs to think about how data is stored, who has access, and what happens if it gets leaked.
Yeah. I don't know why I'm laughing. It's just scary as hell, isn't it?
I think it's because we know that AI is literally like a rocket has gone off,
Yeah.
like one of
Yeah.
Bezos's rockets, and there's no
I'm just, it
break.
just, it might, yeah, I'm just thinking of things like the Cyber Essentials schema that
Yeah,
you go through the framework, and that needs to catch up. You know, when I first did that a few years ago, it was what type of mortise lock did you have on the office door? So anyway, I'll move on. A really interesting one to wrap up is the New York Times have signed a deal to license its content to Amazon for AI training. So this comes after their court battle with OpenAI. It's a sign that instead of fighting AI companies, publishers are now choosing to monetize their archives.
yeah, and that's huge because it sets the tone for how media and copyright will work going forwards. Imagine if every publisher starts licensing their content like that. We could see the birth of a whole new industry around AI-ready content. It's basically the Spotify model for journalism.
Wow. So to sum up this week, IBM's pushing the frontier of quantum, Microsoft's pouring billions into UK AI power, the UK still playing catch up on infrastructure, security is the hot new topic, and the media world's starting to monetize AI instead of fighting it. So a lot is happening, and every one of these headlines ties back to the same theme. AI is no longer experimental, it's economic. So we have it, 6 of the biggest questions we keep hearing about AI, plus a little look into how it's shaping the next 5 years for businesses everywhere. From how to get started to the tools that matter to using AI for planning, it's clear this technology isn't a passing trend anymore. It's a key skill every business and employee needs to develop.
And if you've got a question you'd like us to cover in a future episode, whether it's about AI strategy, automation, or just how to make sense of all that noise, message us on LinkedIn or through the Control Alt Dev page. We'd love hearing from you. What's happening inside your business, your challenges, your wins, your ideas, because that's what shapes our podcast.
Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to follow the show for weekly insights into what's next in tech and AI. We'll see you next week, same time, same channel, for another round of Control Alt Dev, where we help you reset, rethink, and reimagine how technology fits into your business.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.